Well, let's find out more now about what's been happening in Gaza these last few days. We can speak to Tess Ingram, who is a spokesperson for UNICEF. She joins us from Al-Mawasi in Gaza. Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us. We understand that more than 100 people, amongst them dozens of children, were killed in the overnight strikes. I mean, what's the latest you've heard about the scale of the damage from these latest airstrikes?
Well, as you say, the biggest cost of these airstrikes has been people's lives, more than 100 people, and we understand reportedly more than 40 children killed in the last 24 hours. Here on the ground, the strikes began yesterday evening and continued throughout the night from the south to the north of the Gaza Strip. I was in Nasser Hospital today in the middle area, where I spoke to doctors who had said they had numerous children come in with injuries from last night's strikes. I met one of them, an 11-year-old girl called Toka, who had really bad shrapnel injuries to her leg, her arm, and her brain from a strike on a tent in Khan Yunis last night while she was sleeping. The strike also injured her two brothers, and she's just one of many children across the Gaza Strip who have borne the cost of those strikes last night, Tom.
I mean, Tess, they said that for many years it's been said that Gaza is perhaps the most dangerous place in the world to be a child. And here we are with a ceasefire deal in place, and it sounds like it's still the case.
We've consistently said that Gaza is the most dangerous place in the world to be a child. There were a classroom of children killed every day in Gaza for the past 2 years. Now, this ceasefire has meant some respite from that, but children continue to be killed and injured here in the Gaza Strip. Today, I met a little 5-year-old girl, Tala, who a week ago during this ceasefire was buried underneath rubble from an airstrike that killed both of her grandparents and her uncle. And I met children in hospital today injured in the last 24 hours. So the cost of these continuing conflict is weighing heavy on children, as well as the humanitarian crisis, the malnutrition and the deprivation that continues on the ground.
I mean, so many homes have been destroyed in Gaza. I mean, the majority of buildings have been destroyed in the last 2 years. I'm assuming the majority of people, therefore, are still living in tents and will continue to do so for quite some time to come. But have things improved at all since the ceasefire deal came into effect on the 10th of October, Tess?
The situation on the ground is still really difficult for families. They struggle to get the basics that they need to survive. I've spoken to families who walk hours to try and find water, who are still sleeping without shelter, exposed to the increasingly cold conditions here in the Gaza Strip. And food remains something that families are still struggling to access. We have seen improved quantities of food come into the Gaza Strip, but much of it is available in commercial markets at high prices that many families are still struggling to afford. So we need to see more aid come into the Gaza Strip from all of the available crossings to help alleviate the suffering on the ground.
What items are still in short supply in particular, Tess?
As UNICEF, we've been really focusing on trying to meet children's life-saving needs. We want to get nutrition supplies in to fight the famine. We want to make sure that we can truck safe drinking water to people wherever they are. And we're desperately trying to bring in supplies for the winter: blankets, mattresses, winter clothes for children, tents and tarpaulins. We are getting some of these materials in, but we need to get far more in because the scale of the needs is immense. And there are supplies that are continued to be blocked. For example, our education kits and recreational kits that we want to bring in to help resume schooling and run mental health and psychosocial support sessions for kids, they are continuing to be denied entry by the Israeli authorities.
There are 650,000 school-age children in Gaza. I'm just wondering to what extent some sort of educational sort of normalcy has returned to their lives.
As UNICEF, we have been able to reach about 100,000 children with learning throughout the course of the conflict, and that's really good news. But of course, as you say, there are 650,000 school-aged children. So our aim with education partners here in Gaza is to try and get all of them back into learning. But that's a really big challenge given the scale of the destruction that we have discussed. We need to find clear space to put up temporary learning centres or semi-permanent schools so that children can return to the classroom with their teachers. And like I said, we need to get these educational materials in with urgency. So teachers have done a fantastic job of improvising as best they can, but we need education materials to come into the Gaza Strip now so that we can scale up schooling for children.
Sure, and you mentioned the mental health of many of these children, and it's impossible to imagine what they've been through these last 24 months. I'm just wondering what sorts of things are being done and what are the needs when it comes to these children's mental health?
I've met so many children here in Gaza who have been through horrors that we can't even begin to imagine, like that little girl I just spoke about who was buried underneath the rubble, other children who have life-changing injuries, children who've lost family members, their parents, their whole communities. It's an enormous job to begin to try and help children process that trauma, and in many cases, compound trauma of these horrors stacking upon one another. We are running mental health sessions, counselling for children and for their caregivers here in Gaza. But we really need this piece to hold, because for children to begin to process what they've been through, they need the space, the peace, in order to be able to do that. And that's one of the reasons why this ceasefire is so important.
I mean, the scale of the impact of this war on children, it's going to last generations, isn't it?
There will be a lasting impact. There'll be the scars of this for years to come, both the physical scars, like I said, life-changing injuries, but also this trauma that will, in many cases, stay with children. And malnutrition can also have lasting impacts on a child's body, their growth and development that can affect their learning and their futures.
And of course, we've just seen what's been described as the most serious violence in Gaza since the peace deal took effect earlier on this month. I mean, how fragile is the peace deal looking to you?
This is, I think, a really critical moment. And talking to people on the ground today, the message is clear and it's unanimous. Everybody today said to me, this ceasefire must hold. People here have begun to take steps towards rebuilding, repairing their lives, whether that's going back to their neighbourhood and trying to find some sense of home beneath the rubble, or trying to get their child back into some level of learning. Work is happening, and hope remains that work can continue for the weeks, months and years to come. And I think if this ceasefire were to collapse now, that would be beyond devastating for everybody here in Gaza. And I cannot imagine the impact that it will have, obviously on people's lives, but also on their mental health.
And clearly for you and your colleagues at UNICEF, with airstrikes going on, albeit on a less frequent basis than before the ceasefire deal took effect. I mean, clearly a very dangerous environment for you and your colleagues to be working in, Tess.
This has been one of the most difficult and dangerous places to be a humanitarian. Hundreds of my colleagues here in Gaza have been killed over the last 24 months. We persist. And we really do hope that this ceasefire is seized as an opportunity to allow aid to flow at scale and to allow the UN and our partners to be able to respond to the damage that has been done during this conflict. It's immense, and we have a really big job before us, but we're prepared. We have the team on the ground, we have the trucks pre-positioned outside, and the support of the international community. So this is our moment, after failing Gaza's children for 2 years, to really step up and help families recover.
Okay, and just lastly, in a couple of words, if you don't mind, I mean, how would you describe the humanitarian situation in Gaza right now?
It remains catastrophic. It is not over, is what I would say. For people, the ceasefire has meant that the bombs are not falling, killing their families, leaving them in fear as they put their children to bed at night. But what the ceasefire in and of itself has not done is it has not ended the famine. It has not made the trauma disappear overnight.
Yeah, indeed. And as you said at the beginning, 46 children killed in these latest airstrikes, just really illustrating the degree to which children have been innocent victims and in such large numbers in this conflict. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. Tess Ingram, spokesperson for UNICEF. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.